This right here. Oh god, disgusting. I don't know why anyone would watch that. Do you see these fucking comments right here? You should react to Ross's FAQ video. Do you see this this shit right here? This is pissing me the fuck off. Do you know why it's pissing me off? Because they're right. That's why. I should actually look at Ross's FAQ video. I should actually look at the whole picture. Because the entire point of me looking at Thor's video was for me to try and figure out what the fuck was going on in my Discord when everyone was having a bad time. When everyone was shitting on each other, which I thought was pretty funny, and turned out to be a massive nothing burger. This is the man. According to Thor, this is Satan. This is the devil. Someone burn him at the stake right now for daring to fuck with devs. So let's see what Ross, the devil, has to say.
Hi, this is a video on the Stop Killing Games campaign I've been doing. Specifically Hello. The European Citizens Initiative. Now, since that's kicked off, I've seen lots of questions and concerns pop up. That's probably my fault. Honestly, there's hundreds of elements involved with this campaign, so it becomes a haze in my mind what I need to include in each video. Okay. So instead, this video is the whole enchilada. I'm going to try to answer every big question I've seen. I don't want anyone...
Okay, so basically this video covers everything that he thinks. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Ross. Not Jesus, Ross. Thank you, Bald Jesus, for making this video so I don't need to go to a million different little ones. Oh, you missed this piece and you missed this component. This is perfect. This is exactly what I needed. Now that I'm not focusing on my Discord drama that was caused by all this bullshit, now I can actually look at this and see what this whole entire movement is about. Thank you.
To be against this campaign because they feel like they don't have enough information. Now, if you're already on board with this initiative, or if you're completely against it, then you probably don't need to watch this. In fact, I don't recommend it. It's probably going to be long and boring. This is more for people who really want to drill into the details. Now, if you're watching this, I'm assuming you've watched one of these videos already.
I really loved it that he looked at me so sexually and he said drill into the details. That did something. I got a half chub as he said that while looking directly at me.
But if not, super quick recap, we've launched a European Citizens Initiative that, if passed, would allow customers to retain working copies of games they've paid for. Mostly full stop. It's more complicated than that, but that's what this and those videos are for. Oh, and one point that maybe didn't stick the first time, we're the only game in town on this. So if the practice of destroying video games bothers you and you're an EU citizen, this is your only chance to do something about it.
So that's pretty sad. That's pretty sad that he's the only one who's done this initiative. I wonder why he's been the only one to pick it up. Especially when, more recently, preserving games, at least in some format, whether that be digital or physical, has become like way more of an issue over the last few years. Especially with the manipulative shit that large companies do all the time.
You're waiting for something better to come along, you'll die of old age before that happens.
Yeah, probably.
It's this or nothing.
Yeah, and this, even if it gets somewhere, is gonna take like 15 years.
Maybe you don't believe me on that. Fine. But if this fails in 10 years, 20 years, you realize, oh, I guess Stop Killing Games really was the last stand on that, huh? Okay, I'm going to get to the questions, but before I do, there's a few core concepts that are going to come up again and again and might help frame all of this. Concept number 1, always ask, what's the alternative? I don't know if I've communicated this well, but I'm actually in favor of any solution that solves the problem of video games being destroyed.
Okay, so that's very open-minded of him. I think his best option currently is to use the Pirate Bay. I believe that's the best games preservation website we've got currently. Also, my head's getting cold. I'm putting on my beanie.
So when I hear criticisms of our plan, my first thought is always, what's the alternative solution that saves video games? If somebody has an alternate solution, cool, we're on the same team. Then we're just discussing tactics. But if
So I'm on his side. I'm actually on his side then. I want video games to be preserved. I want some format or form of an old video game that no one else dared to even bother preserving to be preserved. I don't want people buying shit, even if they're just buying a license to a video game. I don't want them buying that shit and then not being able to play it 5 years later because some fucking server got shut down. I think that's really goddamn stupid. If there is some NEET in a basement who is motivated enough to put that game back up online off of a personal server, he should be well within his rights to do so.
Somebody does not have an alternate solution, but they're against our solution, well then they're against all solutions. So deductively, that means they are in favor of perpetuating the destruction of games, which means they're the opposition. In which case, we don't really value their critique because they don't want to solve the problem. Like if a parent says to a kid, clean your room, I don't care how you do it, and the kid says no, well, then the parent might clean the room for the kid and throw out some stuff they didn't want them to because the kid refused to solve the problem. So anything about our plans you don't like, I encourage everyone to ask, what's the alternative? It's a fast way to figure out who's on what side.
Okay, so with him saying, what's the alternative? Keep that in mind. Every single thing he says, every statement I disagree with, I am going to rip it to shit throughout this video as much as I can, using my knowledge and experience working in professional fields as much as possible. Not because I hate the initiative, but because I think currently they are far too vague and could be doing a better job. But we'll see how this goes from here.
And some people may not even realize that's their stance until they go through that process. I mean, they might have good intentions, but good intentions and no action, what does that get you? All right, just a couple more. Concept 2, most of what we're doing is about future games. For existing games, don't worry, we'll get to that. But the point is, this campaign is focused on games that don't even exist yet.
So that I don't like. That immediately I don't like. I think there needs to be a law that applies retroactively so that anyone who's hosting a private server of a video game from a company that's no longer hosting that video game, they should be left alone. The company, whether that be EA or Nintendo, has waived all rights to sue or attack them in any regard whatsoever. Right? They should not be able to go after this person legally. I think that should apply to old video games and future video games.
So when I see comments saying what we're asking for is impossible or we don't know what we're talking about, what I hear is somebody saying it is impossible or impractical to make an online game in the future with an end-of-life plan.
That's okay, so that's also another issue I have, right? Retroactive laws are tricky. They're always tricky. That's why you have to make them simple and broad. That's why when you're dealing with retroactive application of laws, what you've got to do is you've got to look at the retroactive application with the future use. Right? So the future use is that from this point onwards, no company can go and attack some dude in his basement who resets up a server for a game that's no longer being provided by the original IP holder. Right? This is also another point I actually disagree with on Ross. I don't think the onus to have some kind of sunset patch or sunset dev system is actually on the developers themselves. I believe that the developers should be able to produce their video game in any mechanism possible as long as they are not doing it in a malicious way that prevents people from setting it up in the future. So what I don't want them behaving like is Apple, where what Apple does is they very manipulatively make sure that people who are private repair stores and stuff cannot go and repair old Apple products because they make things in such a fucking strange and esoteric and manipulative way that the guys repairing the phones just can't do it. They like actively go out of their way to fuck over anyone who wants to keep their older product. I think it should be very simple. dev your game however the fuck you want, as long as it's not trying its best to make sure no one in the future can set this game up as much as possible. You don't need a sunset patch. Gamers and people with the technical know-how have already proven that they have the skills and capability of taking games and running a private server. That's already happening. There's already a WildStar private server. There's already a WoW server. There's already like a bunch of private servers for games that are otherwise dead. So I don't think they need sunset patches. I don't think they need to do that. I think that's just creating extra work and pressure on the developers, and maybe burning through resources that they otherwise wouldn't have. Because now they have to plan for it in the future with anything they make.
Now, I and many developers I've talked to think that's a pretty silly statement, but I've seen so many comments along those lines. I think a few out there have an almost myopic focus on games right now and how things can't change, and that's not where our focus is. Third concept, almost done. It is impossible to save games without some effort from developers and some disruption to the industry.
I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I think if it's impossible to save games without developer effort, what that means is that they've actively put systems in the game to prevent you from doing that. Or at least in the code. I think they should just have preventative measures that stop them from doing something manipulative like that. I don't believe this third concept because I've seen people already set up games. Already get around all the issues. You can go, I'm not kidding, and I'm not going to tell you how I know this. If you do not want to pay for all the predatory bullshit that you see in Mass Effect through the entire series with DLC, you can go onto the Pirate Bay right now, and there's someone who solved all the DLC, cracked all of it, and you can get a full, complete game. From the first Mass Effect all the way to Mass Effect 3, where you're choosing between 3 different colored balloons.
The video game industry has been going down the wrong road on game preservation for a long time.
Yes.
There's so much damage already. Some out there think that the second there's any inconvenience to the industry, no matter how small, then this entire plan is unfeasible. It kind of reminds me of car manufacturers in the 60s when they were required to add seatbelts to cars. Car companies protested that up and down and fought it every step of the way. And you know what? Adding seatbelts did add to the cost and work of making a car. But how much, especially now that time has passed?
I think that's a
games
poor
that are shut
comparison.
down and no longer being sold by the company shouldn't allow the company to boogaloo people's assholes over shit. They are not selling.
I agree.
In addition, these companies that do try shit against servers for games they aren't selling should have the Thanos snap. Fine their ass and give some of that cash to operating costs of the peace servers. This second part is more me being vindictive and not exactly based on logic.
Yeah, that's a vengeful thing that'll never happen. Because you got to remember, the people with the money and the high-powered lawyers are the devs, so they will fight tooth and nail to make sure that never happens. The first part you'll get past, maybe. The second part, not so much. Now, on to his example that he used here of seatbelts and cars. I don't think that's a very good comparison, because seatbelts and cars is actually the difference between someone being dead and someone being alive, whereas a video game is not going to fucking kill you. Unless you have epilepsy, it doesn't have an epilepsy warning and that shit flickers in your face. And we already have rules and regulations around that. I think this whole idea that you can compare a life and death situation to video games is probably a very poor comparison. I think he could have done a better job with something there.
I would guess less than 1%. I think it could be similar for video games.
Also, El Shelder, you're right when you say it's not the devs who would fight, it's the publishers. I'm kind of using the word devs as like a catch-all term, right? But I should probably say companies instead. You're 100% right about that. It's the publishers, it's the company owners. Those people will fight tooth and nails. generally speaking, devs are people who work within these companies, who are super passionate, who have their dreams and aspirations ruined by some bullshit artist in management who's told them to put a monetary system in their game that would otherwise be really good, but takes it from like an 8 out of 10 to a 5 out of 10 because of all the pay-to-win bullshit and other trash that they have to worry about instead.
Future. Remember concept 2. And the last core concept. The European Citizens Initiative is not final law. Something about it will change. It's inevitable.
Okay, so that's what I said in my initial video, is that this is not in a final state. This needs to be revised 1,000,000 times. And it's going to take forever. It's going to take 10 to 15 years to pass. And it needs to go through hundreds of rounds of people fixing and being hyper-specific with everything they deal with when it comes to this.
What we're trying to do is aim the arrow the best we can and hope it hits the mark.
Okay, and I think you can aim the arrow better than you currently have, just from a logical standpoint.
Okay, questions. Will the law we're proposing be retroactive? No.
It should be, but it's a bad idea to try and do that and get the law passed, because it just won't. It won't fly. That shit won't fly.
It couldn't be even if we wanted it to. Sorry if that wasn't clear earlier. Isn't your initiative too vague? There's a few layers to this question. Like, remember concept 4? And it's not actually supposed to be final law. Like, did you know there's a word limit to it? It's supposed to be a basic explanation and your reasons for it, and you have to cite which EU directives apply to show that the EU has authority for it. Oh yeah, that was a lot of fun doing that part. Also, have you looked at any of the other initiatives? This one, Tax the Rich. This initiative does not give a number as to what qualifies as rich. Or this one, Creation of an Environmental Authority. That's talking about creating a new agency. Do you have any idea how many rules and regulations that would take?
So to his argument here, looking at this and him saying, ours is vague and so is everyone else's, I don't think that argument holds water. He should be better. If everyone else's is vague and yours is in a far better state, then yours is more likely to be more valuable and therefore worth the time to invest in. I think maybe they launched this initiative too early, and I think maybe they're targeting attacking Ubisoft and the crew too far too technically, and should instead be looking at a more broad scope but far more specific rule, because now comparing his to other vague things like this just puts him in the same pile as everything else. So maybe they need to revise now, start revising now, and then go through more revisions once people actually know what is and isn't vague. Thor just saw the early version and he hates it and got angry. That's the part that annoyed me, Chielde, is that his response was emotional and not very logical.
Yep, he is coping with his vagueness, and will be focused on being emotional. This will last long and ruin his movement for a while.
Yes, it will. This slows him down. If he had been far more hyper-specific out the gate, then sure, he would still need revisions, things would still need to change, but he would look different from all these other vague things that get kicked out the door. Or just thrown in a pile and be like, here's all this vague shit, it's all the same. He would have looked far better being far more, diving into far more specificity earlier, as opposed to now having to go back and revise it after this petition. He's supposed to be general about it, yes. He's supposed to be general about it, but I think there's still enough vagueness that it's a problem, if that makes sense. I think he could have still been general about a lot of things, but he could have been far more on point with certain issues and points that he's talking about and focusing on that would make his movement stand out amongst the rest of the stuff that's vague and difficult to understand.
Be books worth. So we could be more specific, but it wouldn't matter. That's not our job. That's the EU Commission's job. In some ways,
that's also a mistake. Relying on someone else to do the thing and say this is not my job means that the thing you might get passed is not the things you want passed.
I posted is more important than the initiative itself, because this roughly reflects the views of the organizers, the people who will be going to Brussels to discuss this with the EU. Another layer to this is the law itself can be vague or broad.
Yes, and it shouldn't be.
Police officers, they have to have reasonable suspicion to stop someone, and they need probable cause to arrest someone. What does that mean? Yeah, see, you have to use some common sense because the law can't cover every last scenario.
Yeah, and how well is that working out for black dudes in America who keep getting gunned down? How well is that working out? I've seen the videos. How well is that working out? How well is that reasonable suspicion working out? For the people it's applied to, how well is that working out? Reasonable suspicion shouldn't be my skin tone is darker than a certain fucking chart that a police officer's given. I think it might have been smart to wait for the results of all the formal complaints against Ubisoft, taking away the crew, but who knows how long that will take. Well, this is already going to take forever. So he might as well have gathered enough information. What's 5 to 6 more months in a 15-year-long battle? Here's my vague idea. I will trust the politicians to fix it. Yeah, that's a bad idea. That's a real bad idea.
Like, say an officer sees somebody who he thinks has weed on him, but it turns out it's just a bag of oregano. Do we need to write a law saying that if you're holding a bag of oregano, then that counts as reasonable suspicion? Well, what if...
Only if you're black.
If we forgot to write a law for a bag of dried parsley? See, it just doesn't work. And it's the same for games. Like in the initial...
Yeah, but you see, this is the thing, is he's now being an extremist about this vagueness. Using his example, there's a guy holding a bag of oregano. The law could say reasonable suspicion means that something looks like a drug. The thing he was holding was a bag of oregano, but it looks like a drug, so therefore I can go and investigate. Did it look like a drug if he was holding a bag of water? No. Was he Canadian? Makes perfect sense. They put liquids in bags because they're all brain damaged. So then you don't go and investigate. Right? So there's a middle ground here that you need to look for in your specificity versus vagueness. And he's trying to lean on things being far too vague and then relying on someone else to fix that, which I think is a mistake here. Because what might get passed might be actually more viciously against people who are trying to preserve games than someone who isn't.
Some were asking what is meant by a reasonably functional or playable state. Well, if it's a racing game, I would think that means you race cars in the game world. If it's an arena shooter, I would think that means you enter game maps and shoot at other players. If it's an RPG, boy, that could mean fight monsters, talk to NPCs, use items, manage your inventory, lots of stuff. But what if we try to be specific and make the law race cars in the game world?
Yeah, but
well, does that work for
so his excuse here is you can't get too specific. And he's right, you can't get too specific, but being too vague is just a problem on the other side of the aisle. You need to be vague, but still specific enough that it makes sense for your use case.
The arena shooter or the RPG? I mean, I guess a few of them, but not most. It just won't work. Same goes for technology. What works code-wise for an arena shooter probably doesn't work for an MMO. That's why we...
I mean, that's what New World tried with Lumberyard. I mean, look how well that worked out.
Leave it to the developer. Some were complaining about that. Well, the alternative would be to mandate exactly how every company writes the code that fixes their game. Not only is that unrealistic, nobody wants that. Specific rules do not work for all games, so you have to be broad.
Yes, you have to be broad, but that doesn't mean you have to be vague.
Doesn't your initiative still go too far? Okay, we just covered why we have to be broad and can't be too specific, but there is a 0% chance this initiative survives with everything we're asking for, there's going to be industry input.
Yes.
In fact, I'm kind of worried about one of them. One of our members found out about a lobbying group, videogameseurope.eu.
There you go. There you go. There it is. Let's trust the politicians, guys. They're uncorruptible. Nothing bad ever happens when we trust politicians. You know what's really funny? The more I think about it, you know what's really funny about trusting politicians? They're all the ones who decide if your country goes to war, but none of those fucking politicians or their children are ever the ones on the front line. Strange how that happens, huh? Maybe I'm noticing a little bit too hard.
Look at all the fine members.
There you go. Wait, hold on. The thing to note about the initiative is that the organizers will build a working group with EU lawyers and lobbyists. Well, they're already doing it, Jesse, apparently. They're already getting ready to fight this shit tooth and nail. There you go.
Look at the membership list. There are a lot of companies with live service games on here. I would feel so much better if CD Projekt was on this list. You know, a major European game developer that gives a damn about preservation.
Yeah. You may notice that the people who actually give a shit will not be on that list.
Initiative, it's going to change. So we need to aim a little higher to hit the mark so we have some negotiating leverage. Okay, I am not speaking for the initiative members in this next part. It's not a hive mind. Some agree with me, some are more radical than me. But here are some
Okay, this is a filthy tactic. I just thought of this. This is actually a really, really filthy tactic. But they could do this. Right? They could actually do this and get away with it. What they do, in order to win, is let's say their target is to end up with the laws over here. Wait, actually no, let's put that lower. They're looking to target the laws over here. So what they do is they set a bunch of ridiculously unfucking reasonable demands in their outline and their brief, and they get it pushed through, and then as certain laws get peeled back, instead of aiming here and getting laws passed down here, because they've been ridiculously unreasonable, their negotiating tactic means that they get what they actually want, but they've been aiming up here instead of over here to get what they want. That might actually work. This is a negotiation tactic that's worked very well, is be as unfucking reasonable as possible so that on revision, it seems like you've come to a compromise, but you actually got what you wanted. That might work brilliantly well. It's shitty to do, but that might actually be the thing to actually do, is be as unfucking reasonable as possible so that on revision it becomes something actually practical. That's a good list to check regarding their tax subsidies. Yeah, it is actually. We need another Sweet Baby list. We need another list just like the Sweet Baby people. Hold on, now I'm getting... Jimmy's typing out the entire works of Edgar Allan Poe here. You know what's funny here in the USA, with all the equality we have, if they start trying to draft guys from selective service because men are required to register for that shit by federal law, is that we can sue the government over it because of discrimination, since women do not have to register by law, and we will likely win. You won't win. You won't win because the government will just declare a state of emergency and say it's invalid. They'll just be like, no, bullshit, throw it out immediately, and then state of emergency, they'll just, you know, they'll just push it through. They won't give a fuck. Basically, argument will end up being either everything is equal and women also have to register to be drafted, or women don't have. You know what? If women have to register for the draft, let's just be honest, right? There will be so many women in that country trying their absolute best to get pregnant as quickly as possible. The feminist movement will fucking evaporate, right? There are 3 states when feminism evaporates. The first state is war. All of a sudden, I'm just a little housewife. The second state is the bank account is empty. And the third state is you're getting treated like you're a dude in any regard whatsoever. All of a sudden it's, I'm a lady and you as a man have to do this for me. That's why I think the fucking feminist movement is such a fucking joke, fully, because it'll evaporate the second that everyone gets started treating equally. Because the honest truth is that men and women are not equal. They're just not. They're two elements with different that are meant to work together. We are literally a species that has a binary. We are not the same. We're not fucking hyenas where the females grow dicks that are like 20 inches long. They're already aiming higher than what they expect to and get in negotiations. That's probably a good tactic then. Ross has said that much in the podcast, though maybe not as extremely as you're suggesting. Maybe they need to aim higher then, but I suppose it's a balancing act, Havish, between do we aim unreasonably high and have it thrown out immediately, or do we aim just unreasonably high enough that it gets pulled back to what we actually want?
Compromises I personally might agree to. Instead of insisting that the game works on shutdown, have a best effort from the developers so that savvy users could repair the game. This could be server binaries, server source code.
So I disagree with this point. I don't think they need to make their best effort. I just think they need to not put bullshit in the game that prevents other people from making a server once the original company is no longer providing that service. I just think they need to not do extra shit that makes it more difficult. That's all.
Again, this is optional, guys. That would not be the only option. I'm not mandating that. Or if you want to be really generous, repair instructions. Here, I'll pull up my old slide from a while back. This would kind of be the bare minimum. Okay, back to...
Let's see, the bare minimum. Give notice of service shutdown. They already do that, that's fair. Release packet documentation. I don't think they'd need to do that. Compile and release client software without encryption, DRM, anti-cheat modules, and distributed servers. I think that would be fair, because all of that in that third point is extra work and resources that they would have to put in to make sure no one else can put their game up online once they've shut down their servers. Option 2, notice of service shutdown, release packet documentation. I don't think they need to do that. I think data miners and people who know what they're doing will figure it out. Identity the type of encryption used for client plus provide private key for game if encryption is not a plugin. You see, that might be a copyright issue of security. So I don't think that point needs to... I think you don't need this third point. Or maybe... I don't know, I'm of two minds about this. I think they just need to not do shit that makes it difficult for others to pull the game back up, because you have a small but passionate community who really want to play their fucking car game from 2012 or whatever.
The compromises. Not include subscription service games. I'll get into that one later.
Okay, hold on. Compromises Ross might accept. Also accept a best effort from publishers. So again, I don't think they need best effort. I just think they need lowest effort, which means don't make it difficult. Exempt subscription service games. This I don't like. I don't think subscription service games should be exempt from this shit. Europe Parliament is basically the mob going legit, so final question will be, where's the briefcase with money? But that's every system. That's every political system. That's not just Europe. That's everywhere. It's just some people are better, some countries are way better at hiding it than others. That's all.
And finally, grandfather in existing games. That would be a huge compromise. Nice. Because every game that's grandfathered in will die. Or 98% of them, something around there.
Yeah.
A higher percentage of those games would survive if they were not grandfathered in. So that's giving up hundreds of games there.
So this here, I don't like. I don't think they should give up on this point. Because that means you lose an entire era of games. And then it becomes a lot more easy for companies to psychologically manipulate people into thinking that a game that's actually 5 out of 10 is 10 out of 10. You take a bunch of young kids and you make them play some old games that are super fun. They start wondering, why the fuck is there all this predatory monetization stuff in the modern game I'm playing when they didn't need it? If they never see those old games that don't have that shit, they never have the idea or thought in their head that it doesn't have to exist. They don't get trained into the idea that these systems don't need to be there. They just accept it as the norm. So I don't like that. I don't think they should give up on that point. That should stay in.
It would be a devil's bargain. Hundreds of games sacrificed to save almost all games in the future. And this is about as far as the compromises could go. If we bargain below this, there's basically no point to any of this. Because then there would be so little protection, no games would be saved. So we have to have some buffer. Under your initiative, do all features need to work when the game is shut down? This is another point a few members disagree on. Me, I'd say no, but it's kind of a spectrum. We have that phrase, reasonably playable state. So let's say you have an...
So you see, that word right there, reasonably playable state, is incredibly dangerous. Because we already know that a company like Nintendo, in order to not give up the IP, will have an entire server for what was a game that hosted thousands of players running off of a fucking jerry-rigged goddamn Raspberry Pi to say that it's in a reasonably playable state because, see, one person can connect and play the game, and so therefore you can't touch our IP. That's a dangerous one. That's a really dangerous one. And you can, immediately that companies like Nintendo will exploit that phrase to the fucking hilt as far as they can. They will put that legal dick up everyone's ass if it means that no one gets to touch their shit. They will make sure it's as hard as possible for people to understand reasonably playable state. That's the dangerous one. I think it's always good to remember who paid for the server, the game, the dev salary, and the publisher's yacht. At the end of the day, gamers paid for it all. Yes, they did. And therefore, they should expect that they are able to play the thing that they love because they paid for it. To have companies put in some effort isn't unreasonable. It's not unreasonable, but it may take away resources from what would otherwise be a good game, right? So think about it this way. A perfect example of this is the resources you use in a video game, right? So, in the past, let's look at this in ye olden days, when you made a video game, you just made a fucking video game, right? So, in the past, you have, you want to make a video game. All your resources go into making the video game. Everything you do goes towards making the video game. The sound design, the actual gameplay, so on and so forth. Then, all of a sudden, we hit the modern age. We can monetize the shit out of this. So, what would otherwise have been all your resources spent on making a good video game, now you tell the devs to spend 20% of the time making some dog shit DRM or some predatory monetization system. And instead of getting a game that's all the way up here, you get a game that's quality is just around this region, and all of a sudden your resources are here, right? Then let's get to 2024. Now in 2024, every single monetization system in all these games works so fucking flawlessly, so goddamn perfectly, that they're probably spending about 60 to 70% of their resources, and this is AAA industry, by the way, on the payment systems, the psychology of manipulating people into getting into a game, the loot boxes, all that bullshit, the 25 different currencies, and the actual game, they spend this much time. And you have a dog shit game instead of something that's worth your time. Now imagine, on top of that, you're telling devs, hey, we know you're a bunch of predatory motherfuckers, and you're spending this many resources on the game and making it as dog shit as possible and manipulative as possible, but some people still like the game, and so they go out of their way to play it. This is a very small and niche community, but it's enough that people still play it. Now we want you to spend some extra resources instead on making sure that the game is in some level of playable state. Do you really think that a company who has to do this here in the middle, do you think a company who has to do that there is then instead going to spend extra resources and money to up the quality of the game again? No, fuck no, they won't do that. They'll just say, okay, well, the game's going to be even more dog shit than before because now we're wasting resources on that. You have to remember these people are subhumans. You have to remember anyone in management, anyone who's dealing with the money side of the stuff. They are not game devs who care about a game. They are subhuman pieces of shit who look at numbers and that's all they care about. It's why the words beholden to shareholders are so fucking dangerous when you're looking at big companies. And it's why they keep on making DEI fucking trash that no one wants to play. Oh, that's right. I forgot this as well. I actually forgot this. Some of the resources now have to actually be fucking spent on making sure there's enough black lesbians in wheelchairs who are transgender or whatever the fuck, instead of making interesting characters. So instead of your game being over here, it's now down here instead as well. So it just makes it fucking worse. That's the issue I have, is the resource drain just means even lower quality dog shit that no one cares about. Fuck. And I just thought of the perfect counter argument to that. Do you know what the perfect counter argument to that is? Good. I hope they do it. That way all these big companies will crash. These big companies will fucking collapse like they deserve. That's the counter argument. God damn it. I just argued against myself.
Online arena shooter, it shuts down, the company releases an end-of-life patch, and everything works except for achievements and matchmaking. Well, I think most people would say, yeah, good enough. The game's saved. It works. But then let's say you had another game, it shuts down, and you can technically start it, but all you can do is get into the main menu and nothing works past that.
What he just described is some of the PlayStation games where you've got the disc, and if you're not connected online, it won't download some of the things beyond the tutorial. I can't remember which game specifically did this to me as a kid, but I remember being incredibly pissed off that I bought a full version of the game, I put it in my PlayStation, and the fucking game told me, you cannot play anything more than the tutorial until you hook us up to the internet so we can download the rest of the game. I can't remember.
Well, in that other game, I think most people would not consider that a reasonably playable state.
SOCOM. No,
So
I don't think it was
that
SOCOM.
game might face a higher chance of receiving complaints to the Consumer Protection Agency in that country. So I can't tell you exactly where the dividing line is, but the more the game works, the more it's likely to be an acceptable solution. Do you expect companies to keep running servers forever?
No.
No. They can end support and turn
That's 100% unreasonable.
off servers whenever they want. But they have to do it in a responsible way, like Gran Turismo Sport, Knockout City, Duelist, and so on. What about games that don't require a connection to the publisher or DRM servers, etc., when support ends to work? Nothing. Those kinds of games will be exempt from all of this. And that actually is most video games. Are any people involved with this initiative developers? Yes, a few are game or...
Well, Thor's involved. Thor's involved, and he told you you're all disgusting and gross. He's definitely involved. He's just on the other side, but he's fucking involved now. 11 users here, and it sucks. 7 was peak. Downhill from there with pretty much everything Microsoft. Yeah, it's because Microsoft is a gigantic company that only cares about bottom line.
server software developers in the initiative. I've also had a lot of game developers reach out to me in support of this, mostly indie ones. I think our highest profile game developer in support of this might be Running with Scissors, the developer of the Postal games.
Hi there.
Oh,
Would you like to
shit.
sign my petition?
Oh shit, the Postal games. Oh, of course. Oh my god.
I imagine they understand the madness we're facing better than most. And finally, there's been a couple of
Fucking based. Based postal devs. God damn. Those are some old school motherfuckers. They need the Jason, 20 years in the industry, whole lead hacker, and man who basically created WoW by himself. Yes, they do. Was a bitch. If he had the nuts, he would debate Ross directly instead of bitching around. Login, there might be a reason Thor wouldn't debate over this. And it's not like he's a bitch. It might be that he realizes that debates don't work and don't solve anything. Debates usually devolve into a verbal match of two chimpanzees flinging as much shit at each other as possible. They don't come out agreeing with each other. No one's minds are changed, and it's just another scenario of people are being mad at each other, right? No one is willing to move from their position or change their mind about anything. So maybe he did it. I'm trying to be generous here. Maybe he won't debate people because he realizes that it just does nothing, right? Keep in mind, Thor is a furry whose persona is a goddamn rodent. I'm not being called gross by someone like that at all, seriously. So, I don't think any of that matters. I don't think any of that matters. I don't think him being a furry or whatever the fuck matters at all. And I don't think him calling anyone else gross really matters at all. I just think it's really fucking stupid to get emotional over something that needs a logical perspective. That's all. And that's my personal opinion. Do whatever the fuck you want. You want to get emotional? Get emotional.
developers at large companies that wish to remain anonymous, so they will. I'm a developer with an online-only game. What will happen if this initiative passes? Okay, first off, I can't answer this question 100% because back to point 4, things will change. So
Thor said he would never interact with Ross because he considers him a greasy car salesman. Hold on, I just gotta... Considers him a greasy car salesman. Hold on 1 second. Something just broke. I mean, let's be honest. No one here in the MMO space looks fucking fantastic. I mean, maybe he looks like a greasy car salesman, but he doesn't seem to be acting like one. He seems to have thought this out pretty well. I mean, barring the hairline that's still better than mine, he's not that bad. I wouldn't call him a greasy car salesman. I would say he's closer to that guy who's at the rock concert who's a little bit too old to be there because he's got a wife and kids and he's got to be in bed by 9. That's a personal attack on myself, by the way.
a lot of this depends on what the EU decides. We'll start with existing games. You may have several options, though most of them are not ideal. But remember point 1 and point 3.
Wait, point 1 and point 3.
Though most of them are not ideal. But remember point 1 and point 3.
What's the alternative? And is it impossible to save games without some... Yes, it is. It is possible. But as he's kind of pointed out, there's not really an alternative.
Option 1. You can come up with an end-of-life plan to keep it working after shutdown. Though that may not be possible. See, you could have licenses and middleware that you don't have permission to distribute. Or you know what? Maybe you just don't want to work on the game anymore. I get it. Option 2. You could shut down the game before the law went into effect. Yes, that sucks. But you think it doesn't suck for the consumer every time every other game gets shut down? And the quick-to-react people out there might say, oh, look, this proposal is going to kill games. You mean games that were on death row and were going to get killed anyway? So yes, this would move the timetable up, but the aftermath would be everything gets saved. Option 3, maybe. This one depends
Hold on. I think I actually broke something.
on the EU.
It might
You
be
can move to a
both mics, but
subscription
we'll see.
model instead. Now, this is probably a losing proposition in the long term, we know, but then at least customers are informed how much time they have left at any given time. Option 4, another maybe. Make a best effort to let the customer repair or run the game after shutdown. So this could be server binaries, maybe server...
Like this is the thing, is I don't think they need to give server binaries and all of that shit, because motivated people will figure out a way. We already see that happening.
Source code, again, not mandatory. Releasing packet documentation, I'll bring up that slide again. Removing DRM and so on. Something to give users a fighting chance. And option 5, another maybe, all games get grandfathered in and none of this applies to existing games. This would kill the most games, but this is probably the option most developers would want. Now that's for existing games. For future games, it's everything I just mentioned, which have multiple maybes, except for grandfathering and shutting down before the law is active, obviously. I realize this is less than ideal, but remember point 3.
Again, like you said, this is less than ideal, but it's like you said, who the fuck else has a better proposal than him? Like, genuinely, is there anyone at all who's doing anything aside from him? And I don't know of any initiative aside from his that I've seen or managed to find out.
We have to break the loop of games being designed with no end-of-life plan. Otherwise, this excuse gets perpetuated forever and progress becomes impossible.
Like I said before, I disagree with that. We don't need an end-of-life plan. We just need devs to not be predatory fucks who make things in such weird and esoteric ways using encryption that prevent people from pulling the game back up after they've kind of sunsetted into the distance.
Now, one thing I think some developers aren't considering is if this passes and it becomes a known requirement, I think there's going to be a gold rush for middleware developers to come up with easy solutions to create an end-of-life build for your game.
That I didn't think of. Yeah, there'll probably be like a middleware dev who figures out a way to have a strap system, as the terminology goes, a strap-on that they can just buy and peg into their game.
The market forces would be enormous. I'm trying to keep it real. This is not an ideal situation, and we actually want this to be as easy as possible on developers. But remember point 1, what's the alternative that still saves games? I don't know how this works without some compromise from the developers. If the initiative passes, what would developers have to change for future games while the game was being supported? Well, visibly, absolutely nothing, though you really should have an end-of-life plan. Other than that, it's business as usual. You can still have microtransactions, loot boxes,
It's still a resource drain, so devs are against anything that costs extra resources that won't earn them extra money. I'm saying devs again. I should be saying companies. Companies and management are against anything that is not increasing their bottom line. And this is something that's not increasing their bottom line, so they are immediately against all of it. Even if it's $10 lost income, they will fight tooth and nail to make sure that you don't. These are the kind of people who, yeah, you know, they walk down the road and they see like a homeless guy with like a tin cup and a few dollars in there, and then they lean over and be like, here you go, buddy, this is for you. And then they take all the dollars out the tin cup and leave with the money. That's the kind of people these AAA developers are. You tell me a Ubisoft manager wouldn't do that to a homeless person, and I'll call you a fucking liar to your face. By the way, we know that security on old games do get power crept by hackers, so time will eventually break their encryptions. Yeah, they will, but it may take too long. How about a simple copyright adjustment for games, say 5 years? That'll never pass. They'll make sure that you can never get a hold of their IP. Piper, you're doing this thing where you're thinking logically, you're thinking rationally, and that's not what you need to do. You need to enter fucking clown world and realize that these people are money-grubbing fucks who will do everything in their power to make sure that no one can use their shit. Also, yes, copyright. Jesse's 100% right. Copyright is this entire eagle's nest monster that you can't untangle because the laws were written when Noah's mom was falling off the fucking ark. They're too old and outdated to be used in the modern sense, but they refuse to update them.
DLC, whatever. Would this initiative affect subscription games? Well, that's another
should.
question that depends on what the EU says. Personally, I think it's very unlikely because that doesn't fit well with other existing consumer laws. I think the only way you could even make that argument would be that this is necessary for preservation. And
Yes.
most governments don't seem to care about that at all. However,
they
I don't
don't.
think this is a huge loss since only a handful of games operate that way today. So if we can give up those, but then save 99% of other games, I'm willing to make that bargain. Won't lots of games turn subscription only if this passes? Well, first, I think that's very doubtful, but if this were to happen, I'm not sure you could even blame this on us. The thing is, we've been here before. In the 2000s, lots of publishers were trying to cash in on the success of EverQuest and especially World of Warcraft.
Yes.
There were MMOs popping up left and right with subscription fees.
Yep. Rift, Ion, Final Fantasy, fucking EverQuest 2, like there were a bunch of them. It was like, pay us a monthly subscription, fuck you. That's what they kept on doing. It's quite literally the reason I got the very first job I had was to pay for a WoW subscription. I dealt with the most hideous creatures in existence, being a teenage waiter at a fucking fancy restaurant, dealing with the biggest pieces of shit I've ever met in my life, just so I could play WoW. And you know what? It was worth it.
Dozens of them. Almost all of those either died out or went free to play. It turns out a lot of people don't like having to pay money every single month for several games. The market's only so big. Now,
yeah, usually what'll happen is people will do what's called subscription hopping, right? So what they'll do is they'll pay for one game. And I mean, I was no different. So I played the shit out of WoW. After beating Illidan in the Burning Crusade, I eventually started getting bored. I was farming for the Nether Drakes, and I just got tired of it, so I cancelled my WoW subscription, used that same money, hopped over to Rift, got bored of Rift, hopped over to Ion, got bored of Ion, hopped over to another game, and I kept on hopping because I only wanted to keep one subscription. Also because money was limited. So I didn't want to keep like multiple subscriptions because that's just mentally insane. I'm going to only be able to play one game at a time because I'm not a small Asian boy with 4 eyes and 25 fingers capable of playing like on dual screens and shit. Also, back in the day, you only had one monitor. It was the CRT monitor that you would stare into and get cancer from.
nowadays, it's mostly just the old guard that survived, like World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy games, EVE Online.
Yep.
The market for subscription games is only so big, and publishers know this. Otherwise, they'd be cramming these subscription games down our mouth. Speaking of which, this is already happening, or trying to. EA and Ubisoft have
Hold on, talking about WoW, will you be checking out the War Within? Or never touching WoW again? So, log in. WoW has lost my faith entirely to the point that I won't bother with the War Within until I hear enough good shit about it for me to be pulled into the game. But I'm so tired of WoW acting like a digital girlfriend where it's all on and off all the time. And 90% of the time, she's shit. And 10% of the time, you get something memorable. And it's the 10% of memorable fun stuff that pulls you back in. And then you realize, oh, wait, I have to deal with the 90% fucking garbage again. And you either become abusive and fist fight this woman into the floor, or you leave. And then you're the bad person for doing that, and you're the one killing the game. Because they fucked up.
subscription services, PlayStation Now, Game Pass. Stadia died, thankfully, and it had exclusives. Well, what happens when these other subscription services decide, hey, we should have exclusives too that you have to rent to play? We're already on this trajectory, so there's not a lot to lose here. But I don't think we're going to lose much on these lines anyway. You're talking mostly about live service games. Isn't it unreasonable to expect to own a service? Oh boy, this is going to be a lot.
Why would it be unreasonable to expect to own a game that is a live service game when it is marketed to you almost non-stop like you are buying a game? Right? That should, at least regulatory systems, they should be forced to say this is a service with an expiry date, or you are buying a game and a product. There should be a legal distinction there and an uncrossable wall, and at any point in time, if they market the game as a product you are buying, and it's actually a service that you are buying, it should be considered fraud. That needs massive regulatory clarity.
Long answer. This one gets into the weeds. First, let's talk about the legal answer to this. In Europe, the United States, forget it.
Yeah, it's never happened.
Subscription-based games, I don't think we have a leg to stand on in regard to commerce law. So that's World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy XIV, and so on. These games tell you exactly when they end, and that's what normal services do. So yeah, I don't think there's anything in the law that gets us there, and as I mentioned earlier, I also think it's a hard ask. But what about other live service games? Ones that you buy once, then that's it. So games like
like New World,
Crew, Destiny, Overwatch. It is not clear in multiple countries if those are goods or services.
Yeah,
you pay a one-time fee for a product with no stated expiration date. That sounds like a good, but it depends on an external service, except you're not told how long that lasts. So that doesn't really meet the full definition of a service commercially either. Now you can...
I suppose you could clarify this by the fact that you are buying products within your service. If you're buying a loot box in Overwatch and you manage to get lucky and unlock the legendary skin that puts Tracer's ass back on her body, technically speaking, you've now bought a product, and therefore someone should not have the right to remove that product from you. This might make it easier, actually, this kind of law, that would prevent like gaming companies from putting all these bullshit products within their service so that they can't actually take it away from you, or they're forced into the situation where they can't sell these products within a service game. Okay, let's continue.
You can buy lifetime memberships to things, but those are associated with the business operating. So if I bought a lifetime membership to a gym, then it's canceled after 4 years. But the gym is still operating and trying to sell me a new lifetime.
If you bought a lifetime membership to a gym and it's cancelled after 4 years, the only true way for them to cancel it is for them to hire a hitman to come and kill you.
Plan? I'd be pissed. I think you could sue for that. The Culling 2, a one-time purchase, lasted 8 days before shutdown. Guild Wars, also a one-time purchase, has been going for over 19 years. So how can customers make an informed decision with that kind of spread?
Well, I mean, it's fairly obvious to make a decision there, right? Guild Wars 2, I mean, Guild Wars, at least, is a game with some nice tits in it. Based on the box art here, in the culling, you got to play as fucking Andrew Tate, and that's about it. So not worth it. You should have known which way they was going when they were advertising fucking Hustlers University on the cover.
Shut down. Guild Wars, also a one-time purchase, has been going for over 19 years. So how can customers make an informed decision with that kind of spread? Consumer laws can get picky about that sort of thing. If I bought a warranty for a dryer and the company refused to tell me how long that warranty lasted, maybe it's a week, maybe it's 5 years. We're not going to tell you. How the hell would that be legal in other industries? So just because they call themselves service games doesn't mean they fit the legal definition of a service. So that's the legal side, but let's move into the philosophical side. I am not aware of any live service game that couldn't be converted to something you couldn't preserve forever if customers had access to the code. Okay, now this here is just my outlook. But with the service game, there's stuff I consider a real service and an artificial service. The real services take real people doing something. So that would be player moderation, creating new content, bug fixes, technical support, and the cost and convenience of running company servers. There's more.
I feel like there's something else that's supposed to be here, but I'm not sure what.
Or, the point is, this all takes real people actively working. If they stop, so does the service. Now, the artificial service is being able to run the game. The only reason it's a service is because the code is being withheld. Unlike the other column, no human even needs to be alive for this part to work, because the work was already done. The second the customer has a copy of the server software, it ceases being a service. Yeah, I might need some custom hardware, but preservationists will jump through those hoops.
Yeah, preservationists are already doing all of that shit, so even without all of that, people are finding a way around these systems and making their own private servers because they would rather have their private server that's janky and half-fucked rather than nothing. Is the culling 2 about human trafficking? No, it's called the culling 2 because all you do, just like Andrew Tate does, is you run around pretending to murder pussy. But you're not actually doing it.
And it's not like they're freeloaders. The customers have already paid the company money for the game. Sometimes a crap load of money. And it's insult to injury that many games will just give you the server side as part of your purchase. So even on a conceptual level, we are really stretching definitions to call this part of the game a service. And let me tell you a secret. Any game can be made into a service game.
Yep.
Like take Super Mario Brothers. You can remove the Goombas and the power block locations, hold that data server side, and then lock you out in the menu until you authenticate. Now, Super Mario Brothers is a live service game that will brick if the company shuts it down. Hooray!
Fuck. This man doesn't realize he's giving Nintendo ideas for their single-player games. Nintendo are the most predatory motherfuckers out there, and they get away with it because they actually make good games.
All this crap that prevents you from playing the game is artificial. Now, of course, it makes sense to keep running it as a service because you can make a lot of money that way. Plus, all those real service aspects I mentioned improve the quality of the game. And we're not trying to stop any of that. Companies can keep making money as long as they want to. We're specifically talking about cases where all the services have shut down and the company is no longer making money. Now, of course, there can be many.
Where the company has shut down. I disagree with that. I don't think the company needs to have shut down. I just think the company needs to have shut down operation of the game. If the company is still alive, they shouldn't be able to go and attack people or pretend like they give a fuck when they won't provide the game itself. I think leaving it to the point where the company shuts down means that companies like EA will get away with the most venomous shit in existence. So I disagree with that. To be frank, why fight so hard for something like an abusive ex-girlfriend? Make it derivative. They made you pay too much, ignored the balance request, and live through woke/bad writing. Maybe, but those won't be the games that are preserved. It'll be like, you know how EA absorbed Bullfrog Games, and Bullfrog Games made some really cool shit. But then, theoretically, it's under the purview of EA. So you're not trying to fight for an abusive ex-girlfriend. What you're trying to do is you're trying to fight your abusive ex-girlfriend to get the goddamn woman you wanted to date out of her fucking basement so she stops like torturing her and chopping off her fingers, putting them in a box and sending them to you in a mail. That's what you're trying to do.
Legal reasons, the company doesn't just release their server software to customers once they're done making money. But guess what? That's why we're trying to get the law changed, so these barriers don't need to exist.
That would be nice.
And this next part, I don't know if I can even explain to everyone, But art has innate value to me, which includes games. I think destroying good art is awful. Games are code. They can be preserved. But we're creating systems where destruction is the only option possible. And it's preventable. Every time MMO emulators get leaked or reverse engineered or released by the devs themselves, it just shows this is all possible. I would like to see...
That is true. It is possible. It's always been possible. And some motivated autist in his basement will get this right, even if there are a million hurdles and hoops he has to jump through. The difference between him having it working and not working is just time. Taking IPs hostage should grant lawyers capital punishment. It should, but that'll never happen. It'll never happen like that, unfortunately.
All games people care about saved, even the subscription ones, even though I know I don't have a legal angle on those. But other live service games, give me a break. At this point in time, it's not even clear if those are breaking the law or not. But even if they're not, customers hate having their games destroyed. This is not a hard concept to understand. The mindset here is aspirational, to try and make art and gaming better than it is now, because there's so much obvious destruction. Why settle for an awful practice that might be illegal when a better way hasn't even been tried? If you don't get it, I don't think you will. Isn't there a chance gaming will get worse because of government involvement? I think there's a bigger chance it gets worse without government involvement.
To be fair, it might get worse because of government involvement, but it'll just be a different kind of worse than what we currently have. So if governments get involved, you might have a bunch of companies bitching that they can't do X, Y, and Z, and making up a whole bunch of excuses as to why they can only put 4 fat black lesbians in their game instead of 7 fat black lesbians in their game. And they'll use this as an excuse to be like, oh, these laws, we need to repeal them, so on and so forth. But is that really better than the idea that these companies can go out of their way to find some motivated dude who made a copy of the game, put up a server for free or just to cover server costs? Is that really better?
We just need competent and not prehistoric candidates for politics.
Okay, well, Filter, when you find a politician that's not a subhuman piece of shit, let me know. Regardless of age, you find one of those, you let me know. Because it's like a fucking white rhino, dude. There's one of them. There's one of them, and it's gonna die next week because it accused Boeing of something. That's just how it is.
Now, could they misinterpret things or apply this in a clunky way? Sure, but we don't have much to lose. From our perspective, there's nothing worse in gaming than having games you like destroyed. This practice has already destroyed hundreds of games. We can see where this is going. What if in the future 90% of games are online only and they just keep killing them? They're coming for all your crap. The industry refuses to solve this problem. It wants more of it. Government's the only option left. You think I want to be doing this? Any of it? Government's the last resort. Why don't you just not buy games that require an online connection and vote with your wallet? Well, for starters, we prefer to vote with our votes. We think it's more democratic. But the main reason is this doesn't accomplish our goals. I mean, our goal is to save games we like. So if we buy the game, it gets destroyed. If we don't buy the game, it gets destroyed. So
I don't like this argument. I don't like this idea of vote with your wallets the more I think about it, especially in this case. Because it's like saying, we've made something you really like, and now we're going to strap a bunch of horse shit to it, and you can get this thing nowhere else because we've strapped an IP to it and a copyright and so on and so forth. So I'm with him on this thing. But I also think voting with your wallet is a very useless strategy. Because all it takes to reverse your vote with your wallet is some oil baron or sheikh or whatever to decide he's going to drop 1k on a game, whereas you're just not going to play. Guess who the game companies value? It's not you. Yeah, Caligula gets it. It's ineffective.
I mean, why don't you not listen to music you like? Or why
Yeah,
don't
there
you
you
not
go.
watch movies you like?
Yeah.
What exactly are we doing then?
Yeah, sit in a dark room and do nothing.
Of course, the real answer is, why aren't we boycotting games that do this? Well, that's
Because there's a bunch of shit-eating retards out there who will always suck the cock of a developer and keep that shit propped up as hard as possible, even at their own detriment and everyone else's.
easy. To the best of my knowledge, I'm not sure a boycott of a game has ever worked, ever. And if it has, then when
Has a boycott of a game ever worked? I can't think of one that's worked. I can't think of a single one that's worked.
I'm really sure of is no game that's enjoyable has ever had a successful boycott. Like, I think the one for Modern Warfare 2 is a meme at this point. And boycotts have been tried. This is advocating for something with a 100% failure rate. I would bet money on that not working. What we're doing is trying something that has never been done before, so
That's
it
right.
might work. Won't this go nowhere because customers signed a EULA that says companies can do this? A few things. Straight from the EU itself. Directive 9313 EEC prohibits unfair terms causing a significant imbalance in the parties' rights and
This is what I was talking about in the last video that's been uploaded to this channel, to my channel here, is that a EULA, terms of agreement, NDA, all of that shit doesn't mean anything under a legal system if it's unfair or predatory. So if someone tries to get you to sign some predatory shit, it invalidates the terms of service or whatever contract you've signed, right? Because it has to be within reasonable application of the law and something that has to be considered at least a fair agreement. And this applies both across the US and EU, so that doesn't change too much there. Wukong is supported by Chinese community. Look at the Steam. Yeah, because they've got a strong, unique, homogenous community who love the game. Of course it's going to take off. And also Journey to the West is something all Chinese people grew up with. Even in the US, EULAs are flimsy at best, like forced arbitration. Yeah, it's also because they make them so fucking unreadable. No one read all those pages. Like, there was a software, I remember this, there was a whole story about a software where they had like a cash prize inside of some software terms of service, and so many people didn't read the terms of service that it took like 11 years of millions of people installing the software before one fucking guy phoned in and was like, yo, I saw this cash prize thing in the terms of service. It took years of millions of people before someone saw that. So no one's reading the terms of service.
obligations to the detriment of consumers. Yeah, that's probably 95% of all game EULAs ever written. That's being investigated as you watch this. Plus, the initiative itself says it would supersede the EULA on this issue. What we're doing here is trying to take removal of your ownership off the table entirely.
Which would be
Would
nice.
this initiative affect free games? Well, that depends. Is the game
It should. It should if you can purchase a product within your free game.
truly free, as in freeware? If yes, then no, it would be exempt. Do anything you want. But if it's free to play and has microtransactions sold as one-time purchases with no expiration date, then you're not entitled to the game, but you are entitled to those purchased microtransactions.
Okay, so counter argument to this. Do you think these ancient lawmakers are capable of comprehending that concept? Do you think that these absolute ancient piles of dust, who if you farted hard enough in a 25-meter radius of them, that they would just like turn into a puff of smoke and have to reconstitute at their necromancy phylactery, do you think they're able to understand that concept? Because I don't think they will. I think that law will fall apart real fucking fast. Also, thanks for the follow, Captain Hallers. So my pushback is not against the concept, my pushback is they're not going to understand it. Australian consumer law is great. but we're small fish, so we don't affect the entire gaming community. The problem is it's overreaching in Australia. That's the other problem, is you can't have certain games in Australia because some fucking guy in government has decided it's bad for you. That's the other issue in Australia. So yeah, you've got great consumer rights, but they overreach and then say certain video games are banned because they think they know better than you.
Which need the game to function.
It is a complete separate issue, but it is still tied together, Childer. It's tied together because it's the same people deciding what you can and can't play who are deciding what is good and bad for the community, or at least the people who play games in Australia.
So, yes. Doesn't this initiative intrude upon developer rights and freedom? That is a valid argument to make, and we respect it 100% for free games. But once you start taking money to...
Hold on, well, that's wrong. Steam implemented refunds because of a lawsuit in Australia. Wait, so people purchased the game in Australia. The game was banned in Australia, and and Steam gave people their money back. That's what I'm understanding from what you said there, Havesh, which means people still can't play that game. They're still incapable of accessing that game whatsoever, which means there's still overreach. That's the issue, is it goes from something that protects customers to something that overreaches and prevents customers.
Sell or lease something, you enter the world of commerce. And taking people's money means you're assuming more responsibility for your actions. Every nation has rules on this. So technically, yes, but that's the balance with buyer rights and freedoms. If a health inspector tells a restaurant it needs to follow certain procedures...
Hold on, no, I'm saying Steam literally implemented the refund feature for everyone because of a law in Australia. Okay, so that's a good thing. That's a good law. That's fantastic that they did that. Now can they be able to play the games that are banned? Are they able to do that? Or are the same people who got the refund law implemented the same people who prevent Australians from playing certain R-rated or X-rated games or whatever games that are banned in their country? There's the issue. So you had something good, and then you had something bad come with it. And maybe it didn't happen at the same time. I'm not saying all X-rated games are banned, Childe. I'm saying that certain games of a certain inclination are not allowed in Australia. So something like, I don't know if this is still in effect, but I know for a while GTA was banned. Manhunt is a good example. Bashiro knows it. Yeah, Manhunt. The one where you play as an edgy incel who goes around shooting people. Banned. You're not allowed to experience that. Because they've decided they know what's good for you, and you're too much of a child to make a decision about the difference between reality and a video game. That's the issue. So there's overreach that comes with the good shit.
Procedures. Does that intrude upon a chef's rights and freedoms? Yes, but as a society, we generally think that's worth it. Now that's about safety. This is about preservation and consumer rights. Under your proposal, when a game shuts down, does that mean everyone gets the game for free? No, only existing customers will be entitled to their copies. Now, that's less than ideal for preservation, but to have anything else would have to upend copyright law, and forget it. Besides,
Yeah,
you
you're not
never
gonna
know.
fix that.
Some companies just release old games for free anyway, but it would be their choice. What about people who are banned from online games? Well, as long as the company's still supporting the game, they still stay banned. However, as a customer, they would be...
Company supports game. Wants to shut down game. Moves entire server onto a Raspberry Pi. Just before this happens, everyone gets banned for racism. Therefore, technically supporting the game for the low price of $2 a month in electricity costs. Everyone's banned for racism. If you don't like it, you shouldn't have signed the TOS, and then no one can play the game. Interesting.
Entitled to an end-of-life patch whenever that was. So it might be a year, it might be 15 years. Could be a pretty long ban. To have anything else would create a loophole for developers where they could just ban all customers at the end of life and skirt around the requirement that way. So, wouldn't this make cheating rampant in games? You know, I've seen this
only in games where they don't give a fuck about regulating cheating. I've seen private servers do a better job at regulating that shit than some actual games themselves. Thor wasn't wrong. He could be a greasy car salesman. I don't think he is. I just think he looks like your average gamer. No hairline at all. He looks like he's been in the shit for too long. Banned for racism. I'm black though. We can't be racist according to other people in the USA. Well, you see, this is the problem, right? You've interacted with a white person, which means you must be a self-hating black person, and therefore you're racist. Or they can just say that you specifically are anti-Semitic. They'll put you in the same category as Kanye in a heartbeat.
This question before, and I'm always confused by it. So maybe I'm not getting something here. Nothing would go into effect until the game is shut down. So I don't know how that would change anything compared to now. Online games are under assault by cheaters all the time, even without this initiative. Now, if you're talking about the potential to cheat in games post-shutdown, then yes, cheating could be very rampant. But why would that matter? Because the alternative would be a completely dead game. Usually what happens in these cases is small communities emerge and they kind of self-police to keep cheaters out.
Yes, and they tend to be better than the actual original game does, because games these days implement an automated system, which means that you've just got some fucking AI that you're talking to in an endless loop whenever you're trying to deal with cheaters or report any motherfucker, and nothing actually happens. Because it's cheaper than hiring some fucking guy who's actually got some brain power to figure this out.
But yeah, I might be confused on this question. I still don't quite get it. What if players purposefully try to...
And yes, that's fair, Ray. In the modern day, you can't be racist towards white people, but you can be racist towards Jewish people. So that's how they'll catch you. If they can't catch you on racism because you're black, they'll catch you on anti-Semitism. That's how they'll get you.
Tank a game knowing they can get an end-of-life build if they do it. Well, again, only paying customers would be entitled to an end-of-life build, so they would still have to pay for that privilege. But I think most people who buy a game want to play that game, and the experience tends to be a lot better while it is actively supported. So there's an incentive to keep it going.
Yes.
But this is already a risk of online games. I just mentioned earlier, they're constantly under assault by people trying to force cheats or exploits or whatever. I guess if it gets really bad, you can sue. Bungie sued that cheat maker and they won. Plus, isn't there an entire anti-cheat industry focused on this?
There is an entire anti-cheat industry, and I encourage every single game studio with an online service system or multiplayer to use easy anti-cheat, because it's the easiest shit to get around, and it's hilariously annoying. Playing any game like that and watching some guy fucking no-clip through anything, murder you from underneath the map, and then vanish before you can even see a nameplate. And then the companies make excuses like, no, but we've got anti-cheat software in our game. This shouldn't be happening. Yeah, just strap something to your game that makes the performance worse. I love it when they do that.
I think what might happen is you might see an increase of attempts of that at first due to the novelty of it, but then incentive will probably drop to where it is now already. What about console games? Are they covered? This one gets tricky. The answer is yes, but it's another one that depends on what the EU says. It might not be possible to release the server on the console also, so what they would have to do is release the server software for another platform that you could host elsewhere, and then be able to point the console towards that separate server. But where it gets
console players get fucked again.
Muddy is when you need to pay the console maker just to have that internet access in the first place. So there could still be liability, but it would be off the game publisher's shoulders at that point and onto the console makers. and it's not clear to me if the console maker would take liability when that game shuts down or when they discontinue the console.
Console players would have a rougher time because if they wanted to get around that, they'd have to build like an entire separate like clone OS system to get around the official servers and paying for some online connection to Sony or to Microsoft or to Nintendo, and then it becomes really difficult, especially for console players from that perspective. So I 100% agree with him. It's really, really difficult for console players because how are they supposed to get any of this done with their heads so far shoved up their ass? Like, it's not happening. So I think the people who get fucked the hardest here are console players, and this might actually lead to the death of console.
I think the latter would be more likely, so the console maker would just have to make it so the console's not bricked from the internet once they discontinue it. So you would get your game back, but it might take a while. What about mobile games? Would they be affected?
Fuck mobile games. They're not real games.
I don't see why not, though the sheer quantity of them might lend more weight to the grandfathering argument. I think it would be a similar situation as consoles. It either gets hosted on the mobile device or it's released for a separate platform that it can connect to. How long would companies have to host patches or end-of-life plans? I don't know, just long enough so users have a chance to grab it? 90 days? Could be less.
Usually people grab it on release. The people who are interested in preservation usually grab it as quickly as possible, knowing that gaming companies are less trustworthy than a naked Harvey Weinstein alone with him in a hotel bedroom and a locked door. So that's not too much of a concern from my side. I wonder if some of these huge gaming companies simply hire a hitman to shoot him in his huge forehead simply because he's threatening to cause so much trouble for them. Remember, gaming is huge due to money following it. I don't think gaming companies have the balls to do that. I think those fucking nerds at the top will send death threats and bot someone to death, but I don't think they have the nutsack to execute on an actual murder. Though I might be wrong. I mean, Bobby Kotick did threaten a few office workers with the unalive stick if they said anything. Though he's out the game now, but that he also set the precedent for what you can get away with. So all you need is time for someone else to take it one step beyond that. Stellar Blade is a good example of release editions being for preservation. I wouldn't know. I haven't played Stellar Blade at all. It's weird to me that my phone is more powerful than my PlayStation was back in the day, yet I have not a single game on it because it's also degen. Yeah, you gotta remember, Joe, that mobile game players are housewives cheating on their husbands who need an excuse to pretend that they're not on Tinder, and people with mental disabilities, because no one's on a phone pretending like they're playing a real game. It's only kids and borderline retards who need to spend money on something because they have an addiction who play mobile games.
Won't this mean companies stop making MMO or live service games in the EU? I think it's a complete bluff from any major company saying this. The population of the EU is 450 million people. It's a huge market. The industry...
But mobile games are part of esports. Yeah, but that's like saying the Special Olympics is still part of the Olympics, dude. Yeah, sure, technically. But come on, let's be real. Jimmy No Legs is not beating Usain Bolt. Let's be honest.
Stands to lose billions by doing something like that. And remember, this doesn't exclude microtransactions, DLC, even loot boxes. So companies could keep the money rolling in. Now compare that loss to the cost of an end-of-life plan from the design phase onward. I still think it could be less than 1%. Companies tend to do what makes the most money. But fine, let's say they pulled out. You think other companies wouldn't rush in to take their market share? The rules would have changed a little bit, but the demand wouldn't have left. Even smaller companies, I think, is also unlikely, especially as middleware solutions for this would emerge. However, point 3, the in-between phase could be rocky. But to think that they're going to go away?
I don't think point 3 is as valuable as he thinks it is. People will always find a way.
But what is the extent of time for the end-of-life plan?
Do you mean for mobile players, Filter? Because if you mean for mobile players, the extent of the end-of-life plan is pulling out the life support plug, because it's a mercy that you get to get rid of them off this plane of existence. Oh, you mean for all games? You see that you've got to get into specificities with that. Currently, it's too vague for us to tell.
Yeah, I guess if companies suddenly stop liking money, wouldn't it be a security risk for companies to release their server software? Mostly no, but there are some cases, yes, this is a valid argument. Particularly when a company shuts down a game, but they have a new game that runs on the same engine.
Mostly no. I disagree. I think it's mostly yes as a security issue, because look at Bethesda, who made Fallout 3, and then used the same thing that they used in Fallout 3 for Skyrim, and then used the same fucking thing for Fallout 4, with some updated nice bells and whistles, and then used the same thing and the same systems in their retarded space game, and then used their same systems in Fallout 76. So that collapses their entire company. So that's a massive security issue.
So if users find exploits on the old engine, they have them for the new one potentially. I swear I'm not trying to be dismissive, but I have to call on points 1 and 3 again. So the question is, are these outlier cases where this is a problem a good enough excuse to destroy all online-only games? Of course, I'm going to land on no. The cost is too high for everyone else. Is this only about single-player games or multiplayer too? I'll answer that question with the...
It should be about multiplayer as well. Fallout 4 running on Elder Scrolls 1 engine. Yeah, Ray Whisper, we don't need to try and improve the game, okay? It's already out. I don't think anyone's playing Fallout 4 and then just looking for an updated, better engine, okay? I'm pretty sure people have already decided what they think about Fallout 4.
Question. What does Destiny 2, The Crew, Need for Speed 2015, and The Division all have in common? Are they single-player or multiplayer games?
Both.
Yes. So even if we didn't care about multiplayer at all, which isn't the case, the industry has forced our hand. So in order to save single-player in games like these, we have to save the multiplayer also because they've merged it all together. Otherwise, they would just get exempt on almost every game.
Or you'd have to have it in a percentage functional state where you've only got the single-player experience and then fuck the multiplayer online stuff.
Plus, an arena shooter with 8 players, or 12, you can't have an end-of-life plan for that? Give me a break.
Wow, I can't believe Overwatch still has 12 players.
Now, MMOs can be a tall order, but we've seen both legitimate and illegitimate emulators emerge to know this is possible. So it's both. The industry's given us no choice. Would developers be required to convert multiplayer games into single-player games? Yeah, this one kind of confused me. I mean, nothing about the gameplay would have to change. It's all about running the game, period. Like, I'm thinking of a case like Star Siege Tribes, where that's a multiplayer-focused game. There's no bots, campaign, or anything. But you can technically enter a level and run around by yourself.
Theoretically, you could bootstrap bots into the game to replace human beings.
Fine, mission accomplished. I guess you could have a weird case where you have a game that's meant for co-op or something, and the game won't start unless both players are connected at the same time. As long as it's possible to run it for those 2 players or however many, then yeah, it still works. So I don't see any reason they would really have to change.
Ilgi, this one has to go up on the main channel. On this channel. It has to go up. And yes, I'm still on this fucking video because it's that long and there's so much to say about it. Okay? This has to go up with the comments that are under the previous video. This fucking has to go up. Good luck with the audio.
Wouldn't more clear labeling fix the problem?
No.
Well, the problem is games being destroyed. So I kind of don't care how clearly the game is telling me it's going to destroy a game I paid for. I don't like that being on the table to begin with. Now, the exception is a hard date when the game stops working. Like subscription games. You stop paying after 30 days, that game ends for you. So I think if people saw on the box or the store page that this game expires on January 1st, 2026, I think that would wake people up and change their buying habits.
Game devs maybe normalize the idea that this game is alive for 1 month. They give it a 1 month expiry date. They get everyone to believe that the expiry date is bullshit and they will always continue beyond that point, so that whenever they do shut down their game and people get mad, they can always point to the original expiry date saying, well, this game lasted 6 months or this game lasted a year, but we said it was going to expire in a month. There you go. More malicious compliance.
But I also think anything less than that would not. This becomes a very psychological thing then, and it's a way riskier route to saving games than what we're doing. How will this be enforced? I don't know, ask the European Union. I mean, how does it work now if a business does something like false advertising? Do they get fined? Maybe a percentage of their earnings? I don't know. That's not our job. I do hope the penalty will be big enough to be a deterrent, however. Why don't you just petition companies doing this instead of making a new law? No offense, but how naive are you?
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
I mean, I guess that might work.
Yeah, petition a company. Yeah, I'm sure the CEO won't just look at that piece of paper and wipe his ass with it.
Work 1% of the time. I mean, the companies open to that idea tend to do it on their own. I mean, right now we're facing hundreds of games at risk. So what makes more sense? To petition...
How long does an MMO should say to be clear? It is a service. We last 10 years. And your subs only last for renting our service for a month.
How long does an MMO should say to be clear it is a service? I don't think length matters. It's all about the girth. So it's the fact that the statement is made and it's made clearly that it is a service, and they can't change it then. They can't alter that factor.
Every single company behind those games, or to do it once to the government. What versions of the game will the dev have to release? This is another one that's hazy. I personally would argue any. It just gets so muddy otherwise. For most games, the latest version tends to be the best one, but not always, and a few games tend to have big differences in content between versions, so I can understand people wanting to go back, but man, that might be a bridge too far to ask on
Yeah, that's too
this.
much.
I guess I should have added...
That's too much. Different versions and variations on it. That's way too much. Unless some motivated motherfucker out there just wants a very specific patch to a game and nothing further, that's you know, a step too far.
This to the compromise list. Won't games get more expensive because of this?
Yes, but this is just an excuse to make games more expensive anyway. I mean, they quite literally called something a quadruple A game so that they could like get people to spend more fucking money on it. They will lie to you about what the price of something should be anyway, so this is just another excuse on top of the pile. So yes and no.
I'll keep it real. It's not impossible, but it's probably not why you think. Okay, for sake of argument, let's say it costs 1% of the total game cost. And let's also say a new $70 game just breaks even, so 1% of that cost. That will put it at $70.70. But what's to stop a company from saying, hey, we have to conform to end-of-life plans now, so why don't we really push the price to $75?
Yep, they
or
will.
$80?
They
Hell,
will.
let's try for $85.
This is another excuse for them to do this, without a doubt. You can shoot down your MMO after a week, but don't sue people who create private servers after you bail. Yeah, well, that's rational, and that's logical. This is why I keep on saying that the ideal system would be that if you terminate service of your game, you should have no legal recourse to go after someone else who throws up a private server. It should never happen. I've been saying that the whole time, and my opinion still hasn't changed on that. And I don't see a reason why, if a company has just stopped, that some fucking guy who knows what he's doing throws up a private server, why he shouldn't be able to do that.
And yes, some companies could do that. And this sort of thing has already happened outside of games. Like after the pandemic, we had a lot of inflation. Let's just say it was 10%. So instead of raising their prices 10%, companies looked at that and thought, why not raise them 50%?
They
Or
will.
100 or 200%. We can make
Yeah.
a lot more money then, and we can blame it all on inflation.
Exactly.
So there was real inflation, and companies jacked up the price. But the thing is, you either have to own the market or do that collectively with other companies. Because
Oh, collusion. Man, collusion never happens, guys. Businesses don't collude. Yeah, CEO of Ubisoft never talks to the CEO of EA. That never happens, dude. Never in a million years would that ever fucking happen. You gotta be really coping to think that large companies would work out a deal where they figure out how to do this in coordination so it looks normal and people just have to agree with it. I feel that this won't work for online only because it costs so much to keep the servers up, and it'll only cost him more than what the game hold on will make over time, that it will cost and take way more to make an online game and change it to offline, basically remaking a dead game. But that's why I'm saying this is why I'm saying the onus of altering the game after they've ended service shouldn't be on the devs. It should be on the guy who wants to build a private server or do this in some other way. That should be on him. The onus of changing the thing to function after the end of life should be on him. It's simply that the company itself should not have any legal recourse to go after this guy whatsoever. IP rights should still have the right to dictate on how it is used, though. It would be unfair if we say only corpos should be the only ones affected. IP rights should still have the right to dictate on how it's used. I've been thinking about this. I think if it's in a private server state and it's not generating any monetary profit, no one should be able to go after it. I think if you're making some level of monetary profit beyond a certain percentage of your cost, then maybe you should be able to get some level of royalty. But I know that large companies will just use that as an exploit to pull percentage profit without doing anything after killing a game, and then pretending that they give a fuck. What are you talking about? Skull and Bones was the first true and real quadruple A game title. Okay, we're still on the quadruple A games thing. Alright. Collusion is a far-right extremist conspiracy. Yeah. It's brought to us by the Ananakai and the fucking lizard people, and it's not real, and anyone who believes that large companies who own massive spaces of corporate-like interest, that they never collude. That never happens. Gotta be mentally ill to think that. It's gonna be real sad when you commit suicide with 4 bullets to the back of your head because you thought such crazy things. Man. What about mods for a game? Maybe even custom expansions. Would payment be allowed? Well, I mean, if they're developing a mod and they've developed it from scratch, as opposed to just copy-pasting someone else's work, then that's their own work that's being bootstrapped onto a game.
Because as soon as one big company breaks ranks, then they can kind of get away with more market share because they're selling their game cheaper. I'm honestly not sure if there are price-fixing laws in this sort of thing. Isn't Sony being sued over jacking up their prices? The thing to remember is they're going to try and find ways to increase prices on you anyway.
Yes.
So is fear of a price increase, which they may or may not do, which may get them into trouble with regulatory boards anyway, worth the cost of destroying all online games? I'd say no. What if a game company goes bankrupt?
Then fuck them.
The most likely penalties will be financial, so if they're bankrupt, then it's kind of moot point.
Yeah, if they're bankrupt, fuck them. They killed the game, they fucked up, they screwed things up, and some random neat in his basement can do a better job, then eat shit, they deserve to die.
Yeah, the game would still die, but then the company would have more skin in the game. There wouldn't be a financial incentive to kill the game the way there is now. I would think most companies are very motivated not to go bankrupt. Hey, if every time a game had been destroyed in the past, the parent company had gone bankrupt over it, I wouldn't have even started this campaign. Won't big companies just make shell companies so they bankrupt the company every time they want to shut down a game? Again, it's not impossible, but remember, companies...
Hold on, I need to hear that again. Won't big companies just make shell companies so they can bankrupt the company every time they want to shut down a game? Yeah, so bankrupt the company, game shuts down, they no longer have any legal recourse for the guy who puts up a private server. They will do this, so make sure they can't do it and profit off of it.
They want to shut down a game? Again, it's not impossible, but remember, companies like to make money. So is the cost of shuttering an entire studio and cooking the books to make them bankrupt and spinning up a new studio for the next game more than having an end-of-life plan? Plus, this...
Yes, if they make enough money off of it in a short enough time period. Yes, they can get away with that.
So make having a good reputation kind of impossible. What about games that are so huge?
Also, it means that you can get rid of a bunch of workers. You don't have to deal with the services. You don't have to deal with paying a bunch of people. So you could do it that way. Get a bunch of temps, make them work their asses off for as little as possible, and then throw them to the curb once they've made the game. Get as much profit as possible. Transfer it to the primary company through some bullshit legalese thing of ownership, and then shut it all down and then move on. They could get away with it.
Huge in scope, they can't be hosted on home computers. Well, I think this leads more credence to the best effort solution. I can think of two examples. One is EVE Online. I believe it can host up to 500,000 players simultaneously. Yeah, no customer system's gonna be able to do that. But if they had to shut down, does that mean they can't release an end-of-life build where maybe 100 could connect? Or maybe they just release the server code, let the community figure out, and they decide how many custom resources they want to throw at this for how many players.
This might be a future problem where current systems can't handle that, but future systems might not have an issue with this at all. As computing power gets more powerful on the personal side, this may be an issue that evaporates over time. So this might not even be something that needs to be considered.
Another case I'm thinking of is Microsoft Flight Simulator, where in order for that game to look its best, it has to connect to Bing Maps, which has 2 petabytes of data.
Fucking Bing Maps. Oh man. Oh man. Bing fucking Maps. I never knew that Flight Simulator was doing that.
Data it's accessing. So if that game had to shut down, I think it would be reasonable for them to say, okay, here's all the data. We'll keep it hosted for 90 days or so. Good luck trying to download it. You're on your own now. As long as it's possible in some capacity, that's the main point. The players can deal with all the rough edges. Don't some games deserve to die? Actually, yes. But one man's trash is another man's treasure. So that's a subjective assessment.
That is true.
If you've paid money into the game, then you should have a voice on whether you get to keep it or not. If all online...
In some senses, we should preserve the most absolute dog shit games in existence so that we can always look at them and laugh. They should still be preserved so we know just how bad things got at one point.
Games were awful, then yeah, this initiative wouldn't be necessary. But that's not reality. How does Ubisoft and the crew relate to this initiative?
Yeah, that's what I want to know.
That's completely separate from this initiative. That was about reporting to consumer protection agencies, and that's...
Okay, so then why was that strapped to your petition instead of being something completely separate?
Largely underway. So those are two different things. You don't have to be connected to the crew for any of this. What are the chances of this initiative passing? That's a hard question to answer. I mean,
in the next 15 years, about 20%, I would say.
For getting the signatures, you tell me. I don't know. I would bet if we do get the signatures, this solves problems. But that's almost not the way to even look at it. It's like I said at the beginning, the initiative and Stop Killing Games is it for action on this issue. If we fail at this, we fail for life. The industry's only going to get worse permanently on this issue. I feel like the Dutch boy with my finger in the dam here. If this goes, that's it. There's no round 2. It's over. Okay, that's it for questions.
If this collapses, you've got like maybe another 30 years before something like this is pulled up.
I have a few quick corrections. First, I made a mistake on this video with counting, where I said your votes don't count unless they pass the threshold. No, they do, so don't worry about that. Just get more votes. The second is, for some countries, you can use EID. The way it was explained to me is if you already have one of these, you don't need our guides. So we left it out just to keep it simple, but you can use it. Okay, well, there are probably literally endless questions, but I hope I answered enough to clear up where we stand on this. I have put some thought into this topic. This video hopefully got rid of some fence sitters. Which side they landed on, I have no idea. For those on board, go sign it. All right, that's it. See ya.
All right, not bad. I think he explained things quite well. Like I said, I was trying to poke as many holes in it as possible. I still think they could have done a better job before they posted the petition and got a bunch of people to sign it. I think they're confusing vagueness with generality and with aiming at things in a more particular manner, but not so particular that it's unfeasible to change it at a later state. I wouldn't say anything in here seems like Thor posted as being gross or disgusting or disturbing. Most of this seems pretty above board, and this convinced me more that this is the correct kind of initiative where their intention is good, but all they need to do is continue to refine information. Right? They need to continue to refine what they're trying to get past. And that's going to take another 16 fucking years, 15 years, something like that.